Ladies and gentlemen, welcome for this second session. I'm Nancy, and I'll be moderating this session on the socio-economic indicators. We know that the demand for coffee is growing, but are we taking care of the producer of the coffee? I know a lot of time we talk about the prices, we talk about the cost of production and all that, but we are not actually, we don't have a lot of data on the socio-economic performance of the producer themselves. And ladies and gentlemen, if we don't take care of the producer, it will reach a point where we'll have the market for coffee, but no coffee. So this session, we are going to look at what are the social indicators, socio-economic indicators of the producers themselves. For example, in Africa, and especially in Kenya, I want to talk about Kenya, there is a lot of dynamics in the socio-economic status of the farmers. Whereas 40 to 50 years ago, we had large families, and that was the source of labor. Now the families are becoming smaller. People are getting more educated. The farms are becoming smaller. There is the challenges of urbanization, and a lot of dynamics in the family setup has changed. So is there any data that has been done? We are looking at who has done a study to see and find out what is happening at that sector of the coffee value chain, and that is the producer's level. Because these things happen on a small scale, but with time they roll on and become a very big and a major constraint to increase in production. On top of other challenges such as increase of cost of production, climate change, fluctuation of prices, we have to look at that very producer down there. What is happening? What is changing? We've talked about the age. The farmers are getting older and older. Nobody is taking over. The young generation don't want to do anything about coffee. We are talking about the farms, the cultural aspects of it. In Africa, when your sons get older, then you have to subdivide the land. And the land has been subdivided until we have people having a quarter of an acre. That is a very micro, size of land on coffee. Is it productive? So, ladies and gentlemen, with me, I have a panelist with me who will help us look at the socio-economic indicators and see how this is going to affect the production and productivity of coffee. From my further left, we have Mr. René Leon, who is the Director, Regional Cooperation Cooperative Program for Technological Development and Modernization of Coffee Production from Guatemala. Welcome to the panel. Then I have to my immediate left, Mr. Shod Panusen, pardon my pronunciation. I was trying to learn it now. He comes from MIVOS International. Welcome to the panel. Okay. And I have to my right, Mr. Pablo Ramirez, who is an international consultant. Maybe I'll start with Mr. René Leon. Maybe you can give us a few remarks on these socioeconomic indicators.
Bien, buenos días. Muchas gracias.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, moderator. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to point out that I am representing Prome Café, which is a regional program, 9 participating countries from Central America, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, Panama, and Peru. And in this case, I am going to just talk about some of the conditions that Central American producers are facing. I'm focusing on Central America. Certainly, coffee growing in Central America is very important to the region. So, from every point of view, they're growing about 1 million hectares in Central America under coffee. So it's major social and economic and environmental importance for our region. In economic terms, income is important for our countries. Between 15 and 20% of foreign currency is due to coffee. In Honduras and Nicaragua, around 7% of GDP is due to coffee. Socially, around 330,000 growers in Central America. If we multiply this by around 5 people per family, then we're talking about 2 million people within families, within this 330,000 families that are actually involved in coffee growing. And in addition to this, we've got about 12 million jobs that are actually directly linked to the coffee industry. So I'd like to say that in our Central American countries, around 90% of producers are smallholders. They have between 1-3 hectares of land that under which is coffee. They are smallholders who were born as coffee farmers. It's traditional in our countries. They didn't get into the business because they negotiated their way in, but they were born into it. And they have land, and the land is passed on, and they know what they're doing. They know how to grow coffee. This is very important. This is a very specific characteristic of our region. Environmentally, we mentioned the importance of environment. About 80% of areas are in agri-forestry systems. So that's coffee being grown in shade. Again, water is necessary, and also there's a certain fauna that is part of the wealth of our region. Vegetation is also linked to this. This is very important for our region. We are going through a difficult period in terms of coffee and coffee growing, problems that are very complicated, and we're trying to face this. Climate conditions are changing, higher temperatures, irregular rainfall, and we have more diseases, more rust that is affecting the region. 50% of the area in Central America was affected by leaf rust, and this was a great loss in terms of coffee. And we have very low prices in terms of income for farmers. That's been the case since 2014, and prices are going down, and this, of course, affects our coffee growers. Higher costs in the business and lower prices, which doesn't allow us to deal with the problems that I've listed. So as a result, the coffee sector in Central America, for the economies of these countries, this has been very difficult. And if we examine this from the family point of view, family life has deteriorated. Families at the moment have less opportunity to invest in education, and there's a very high literacy rate, 30% in the region. And then there's food safety. In this particular case, it's not a question of whether the profits are good, it's whether the family is eating or not. And in the coffee growing regions, about 50% of the food safety problem is there, particularly focused on women and children. They are most affected by this problem. As I said, this is the problem. The holdings are being abandoned. People are leaving the coffee fields. They're migrating. They're moving from the country to the city. They're moving to other countries. In the case of Canada and the United States, also there are social problems. And I'd like to say that when there's no care given to the coffee plantation or farm, then the other problems set in. Replacing crops which are less appropriate for the environment. They change to maize or other crops which don't protect the environment at all. So coffee growing in our region, from every point of view, is not economically sustainable. And I'd like to conclude by saying that the producer in Central America is now asking how a cup of coffee on the market in Europe and the USA it costs about $3 to $4, while at the same time the farmer or the producer is just earning a few cents for this same cup of coffee. We are co-responsible for the business, but at the same time as producers we want to benefit from this, and we need, in view of the energy that goes into it, the effort and the risk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rene. Now let's hear from Mr. Sean Madison.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. As said, I'm Sjoerd Panhuizen from HIVOS. HIVOS is a Dutch development organization from the Netherlands, and we are active in many coffee-producing countries for over the last 20 years. Currently, we are involved in quite some large programs with private sector partners like Starbucks, Green Mountain, and Ecom, and especially to improve farmers' livelihoods. And these programs together address or reach to more than 250,000 coffee farming families. Next to that, we also are very active in a global lobby and advocacy program to support knowledge sharing about sustainability in the coffee sector and address also what we call fair and greenwashing, especially by some coffee multinationals. Well, since this is about the socio-economic aspects of coffee production, I thought let's frame it in 3 points. As HIVOS, we are addressing coffee farming as a family farming business, and as has been said, youth is indeed one of the major challenges, I think, for the coffee sector, especially since most parents are telling their kids, well, you can do everything you want, but please do not become a coffee farmer. So that is a real big concern. One of the points that we are also always highlighting is the gender aspect, because if we are talking about the millions of coffee farmers in the world, we tend to forget that half of the workforce are actually women. And most of our programs and training activities which are being implemented all around the world do not specifically address women or the issues of women, or, for example, the decision power at household level, which has a huge influence on how income is being spent and how income can also be invested in producing better quality and quantity of coffee. One of the other points I think which is relevant to mention is the diversification of income, because yes, we can talk about price of coffee, and that's always the discussion which we will have with coffee farmers, but there's also income can come from different streams. And I do think, like with the agreement in Paris last year, one of the possibilities is to link it to the new climate change funds which are upcoming. And since what my neighbor was also telling, the coffee agroforestry systems provide very important ecosystem services for which also payment systems are being developed currently. Of course, they're all in their infancy, but it's very relevant and interesting to look at also from the perspective of income diversification. And next to that, I think we are not going to be able to avoid a living wage discussion. Yes, we can talk about certification and that it's not really bringing what we expected maybe 10 or 15 years ago, but that's still certification. I think it's relatively new. It has good models addressing, I think all of the themes that have been mentioned already today. But one of the lacking points also here is, and what is currently being highlighted in the cocoa sector is, we are not in it to certify poverty. We really want to address sustainability. So the living wage discussion, I think that should be something relevant also for this agenda. And underlying all these ideas and thoughts, what we really are in need of is reliable data. We still do not really know how many coffee farmers there are in the world. The data goes from, it's always saying around 25 million, but it can also be 20 million. Well, that's a big difference. We do not know how many hectares exactly are under coffee. And by higher demand of coffee and potentially the need for more hectares. We need to know this type of very simple figures if we really want to say something about profitability and the profitability of the coffee sector as such.
Thank you, Mr. Panushen. Let's hear from Mr. Pablo Ramirez, international consultant.
Thank you. So here's what I see. We have always seen sustainability as three pillars. We have the social, we have the environmental, and we have the economic. So throughout the years, after many interventions and certifications, the social and the environmental became the primary ones. Everyone was talking about the water and the erosion and everything, so they became the primary ones, but the economic didn't. After all these years of interventions, the economic was put aside. So this asymmetry between these three pillars, it's what's creating the farmer livelihood risk. And this is what I think we're facing right now. And we cannot wait for losses to materialize to start dealing with the consequences. I think that's my main message today. This is the time to act. This is not going to be the next generation. It's going to have to be us, right? So we have to reestablish the priorities there. And I believe, as it was mentioned in the panel before, that the economic is going to be the priority, because the economic pillar of sustainability is going to be the real one driving the changes. The social and the environmental are going to be outcomes of the economic pillar. And that's my second main message today. So how do we strengthen the economic pillar? The key message here is that the farmer should not be burdened with this effort. It's going to have to be an effort that is going to be distributed on all the entities in the supply chain. We all have to put because we have seen the farmers throughout all these years, they go to trainings and they go certified. And as you said, I've been certified 3 or 4 or 5 times, and sometimes the certification costs add up to 6 cents per pound or more in some cases, right? But the farmers have been doing a lot. They go to trainings and they attend and they become certified and they became part of farm organizations. They develop this loyalty and they deliver the coffee, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we need to share the responsibility of this. This is the time to do it. And I think this is the right place to start discussing these difficult issues, right? So, how do we strengthen the economic pillar? We know the problem. Let's start with some solutions just to be provocative here. One is, of course, reduce price volatility, that we talk about price. Move towards living wage. That was already mentioned by your friend. Increase demand of sustainable coffee. I think that's also critical, of course. And pay the well-deserved premiums. It all comes down to, does it make sense to be a farmer? It all comes down to the business proposition for farming. Are farmers with 2.5 hectares, I mean, should they be in the farming business or not? We're going to have to deal with this question right now, and this is something that probably starts the more conversations. But at this point, I think this is time to start asking these questions. If you are a farmer, it has to make sense. They're not stupid. They run the numbers. They know the ROI, the return on investment. They know that in a very empiric way, but they know that. So if it doesn't make sense for them to be a farmer, they won't be a farmer. It's just as simple as that.
Thank you very much. And when we look at the challenges why we are not having young people joining coffee farming, it's the same math. The young people are doing the math and they are saying, is it profitable? Cost-benefit analysis. How much do I put in? How much do I get out? And then again, can coffee compete with other enterprises? Can we compete with horticulture, which after 3 months I have my vegetables and I have my money? Can we compete and make a profit and make a case for coffee? And these are the questions that I'll want us to have at the back of our minds even as we go back to our countries. Can we compete with real estate? Can we compete with white-collar jobs? Because young people don't just want to look at the culture of coffee and the big picture of a source of foreign exchange. They want to see, am I making money, and I want to make money fast. And like our parents before, our parents were very patient in waiting for money. Now, I'm at the transition, ladies and gentlemen, from the young generation to the old. And I know I want money now. I don't want money tomorrow. I don't want money next week. As a young person, I want money now. Now, as a coffee farmer, can you make a case for that, for the young people? If we are going to have these young people join the coffee farming and have a sustainable coffee producing, we need to answer that question. Properly, I'm going to give back to Mr. Leon to give us what are we doing in Guatemala, for example. What is the government doing something to look at sustainability? Because when you look at in Kenya, for instance, the Nairobi, the capital city, is an agricultural land, and we had a lot of coffee around Nairobi. Now those ones are being cut down in chunks because real estate will give me quick money. For a very fraction of that farm, I can put so many units and make quick money tomorrow. Now, if my father owned 1,000 acres of coffee in Kiambu, which is in Nairobi, next to Nairobi, as soon as I get my share, I'm not going to do coffee. My maths tell me, I'm a finance person. My maths tell me I'll make billions now and live now, larger life, than wait for coffee for over years. So those are the questions we have to look. Mr. Leon, welcome.
Gracias.
Thank you. It's been said that among the major problems is this lack of interest in young people in continuing in the coffee growing business. And as to what's being done in the region, efforts are being made by the Institute to try and interest young people so that there will be some continuity of young people and to continue in the coffee business. Also, education related to coffee is, again, we're providing training for the different working areas in coffee, all with a view to focusing on coffee growing and keep the younger generation interested. But after the comments that have been made, young people are only going to be attracted into the activity when it becomes a profitable activity. And there was a recent meeting that I mentioned, because when something is profitable, whatever it is, whatever the business is, then certainly young people are going to move towards that activity or profession. But if coffee is not profitable, then it's going to be very difficult for them to work very, very hard and to put a lot of energy into it, and they're not earning. If the profits aren't there, they want to have it guaranteed. They don't want to run the risk of further poverty. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leon. Mr. Panuse, something to add on that, please? Thank you.
Of course. Maybe an example from Uganda, where we are working together with Full Cafe. What we've been doing is first, one of the issues highlighted, the farmers are very old, 60 plus. We asked the farmers, what would you need? They said, well, some help and support could be, that would be handy. And on the other hand, we asked the youth, how do you see your future, or do you see a future in coffee? And a bit to our surprise, a lot of the youth do still see a future in coffee, but they need, they might need some training, but they also say, well, we also want to use more, want to make use of modern techniques. We want to have access to internet, or we want to do it differently. And that's something that struck us, how to do things differently. So actually what we are currently doing is develop sort of entrepreneurship models with small groups of youth, and they are actually selling their time to the older farmers, and thereby learning the job on the farm. And this seems to work quite nice, and that I think that's also an important part if we talk about agriculture, the cultural part. It's the youth feel part of the community, but they need to have the opportunities there. And yeah, the idea of everyone having access to Wi-Fi or high-speed internet, that's also something we are promoting or trying to develop. And these are more like technological solutions, but they are very. There are a lot of eager young people that would like to stay far from the city, but still would like to have access to all the modern technologies that we have. So that's also something that we are working on.
Thank you, Mr. Panishen. Maybe we'll have a comment from Mr. Ramirez, and maybe mainly on, also you can add on what we can do when it comes to the data and trends, what we can do on the international front. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to mention some pieces of data that we gathered over the last years. We went to these supply chains in Colombia, very well-developed supply chains. In this particular case was 1,250 farmers that we were sampling, double certified. These guys were really good farmers, they are above average yields. And then we start measuring poverty. So what's happening with poverty with these guys? So we use the PPI index for that. 39% of the farmers were below the poverty line of $2.50 a day. 39% in a very highly developed supply chain. Whoa, what are we going to do about this? So we started asking more questions. Then we started to, let's understand who these farmers are. We started asking segmentation questions in which we asked the farmers, would you like your kids to be farmers? 95% say no. 95% of the farmers say, no, I don't want my kids to be farmers. That is a reality, even in those highly developed supply chains. So we were thinking, with these results we can extrapolate and we can give some teachings to other countries, etc. But no, this is how deep the problem is, that even if we start segmenting farmers by attitudes and behaviors, what we are seeing is that they don't want to stay in farming, and some of these farms are what we call trapped. They were trapped in farming because they inherited the land, or it was the land that was split because of their older families passing away or something. But this is how serious this problem is, and the data that we have, it's showing. But also there's hope. I want to give the message of hope as well. So there's hope. And if there's a group that can pull together solutions, it's this group right here at this point. So there's hope, and I'm just going to mention one example of one cooperative as well in Colombia, and they're trying to put together this program for price stability by having some farmers sign up for futures contracts, right? And even small farmers that were producing 100 kilos, all of them, and I have the numbers showing that all of them, they got for a period of 3 years, they actually got an increase in the price from 6 to 7%. 6 to 7%. I mean, that's significant. And these guys, by having a farm organization with a good leadership on top, they are saying, okay, I want you to go into this futures contract. I want you to lock the price. I want you to lock the quantity for the next 3, 6, or 9 months. And they were able to convince even smallholders, less than 5 hectares, to do this, and that increased their income 6 to 7%. So just want to say that. There's hope.
Thank you very much for the message of hope. Ladies and gentlemen, as we come to a conclusion, it is very apparent from our discussion here that coffee farmers are getting poorer by the day. It's no secret. We also conclude that most of these farmers will not want their next generation to be in coffee farming. So as Mr. Ramirez said earlier, we cannot wait for the losses to materialize. The losses are already there anyway. But can we wait for it to go further deep before we can act? I think this is the time to act. We need to come up with studies, the way we are studying on the benefits of coffee as a health drink. We're looking at, studying about the prices and all that, and the climate change. I think it is time we also come up with the figures on the socio-economic indicators of the coffee farmers so that we can come up with mitigating measures to ensure that our coffee farmers or coffee farming becomes a profitable venture. And not just profitable for once, but a sustainable, profitable venture if we are to remain in coffee for the next 50, 100 years. Because we can, we keep telling our farmers there is market for coffee. There is market for coffee, but who really benefits from this market? Is it the farmer on the ground? Is it the person, in the middle of the value chain? Is it the roaster? Is it the coffee drinker like you and me? Who benefits? And we need to ask those hard questions so that we can go back and say now, if we want the coffee drinker to be happy, then the coffee grower must be twice as happy because he's the one who, it's a chicken and egg. You cannot have a very good fried egg if the chicken is not happy. It's time we really feed the chicken. It's the time we really take care of that chicken so that we have as many eggs, and not just eggs, good quality eggs for this matter. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I think we come to the end of this session, and have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the panelists and our moderator. I have just a few comments. We've had two very interesting panels. Right now, we have focused more on the farm, let's say, on the farmer and socioeconomic indicators, the problems, the challenges that they have. We're going to move to something, to the next two panels, a little bit more global. We move to climate change and to international prices, and have this discussion on how to face together those challenges as a chain. So as we said in the beginning, they're putting time in for me. We said at the beginning, the whole chain, the whole idea is that it has to be positive for everybody, from the first link to the last link, and this is what we're trying to discuss here. We have had a very interesting groups. A couple of logistics. We're gonna have a coffee break now. Please try to make it 15 minutes. And for the panelists and moderators, at the end of the panels, or maybe at lunchtime, I don't know what's better, we're gonna have a group picture taken. The ICO staff will tell us where and when exactly, the details about that. So let's have a coffee, 15 minutes please, and we're offering a prize for the next panelists who are here. Those who stay in their time will get a free cup of coffee. Okay, thank you.